Hi guys, welcome back to Nairobi Legal. Today we continue with health law in Kenya, but specifically for this video, we're going to be talking about detention within health facilities. In that regard, these are the key objectives for this video. One, we're going to be discussing whether it is lawful to detain a patient within a hospital facility for failure to pay the medical bill. The other objective we need to achieve by the end of the video is for us to understand when can a person be detained within a health facility as far as the Public Health Act of Kenya is concerned. In line with our first objective, we need to understand that detaining a person for non-payment or failure to pay a contractual debt is a violation of Article 29 of the Constitution. As a student, you need to appreciate that every person within the Republic of Kenya has a right to freedom and security of the person. What we mean here is that for someone to take away your freedom, it must be according to the law, meaning that hospitals have no right to actually detain you within their facilities simply because you failed to pay the medical bill. So just to emphasize that Kenya has actually incorporated the provisions of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights as far as Article 2.5 and 2.6 of the Constitution is concerned, meaning that Kenya as a state is obligated under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights to protect its citizens against violations of the right to personal liberty by third parties. And what we mean here by third parties is that these are lawful organizations such as schools, hospitals, and even employers. So the state has the obligation to protect you from these lawful organizations that might take advantage of your right to personal liberty. And this happens a lot in hospitals as someone has failed to pay their medical bill and is being detained till they pay that medical bill. Remember, this happens a lot in health facilities. And to put this into context, we had a case of Maimuna versus Pumwani within the Republic of Kenya. This case involved two women who were detained because of their inability to pay their maternity fees. Now, for Maimuna, after giving birth, she was discharged. And remember, upon this discharge, the bill was to be 3,000. Now, Maimuna discovers that she had only 1,000 bob. And because of this, she was moved to a different ward where other patients were also put and detained for over 20 days without food or blankets. And this is because they could not afford to pay the required medical bill. In this case, the court ruled that detaining these patients under poor conditions, including making them sleep on the floor, with poor sanitary conditions again emphasized, amounted to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment. Now, in this regard, as you can already see, the state has an obligation to protect you as a patient from these institutions. And these institutions could take advantage to simply detain you because they need the money. Just for you to understand the concept of unlawful detention because of the failure to pay a medical bill, you can also consider reading these two cases that were relied on in the case of Maimuna versus Pumwani Hospital. Remember, up to this point in time, there is nothing in law that gives authority to health institutions to detain patients or clients for non-payment of bills. So this is what the law provides, and this is what the court stated in the case of Maimuna versus Pumwani Hospital. Remember, the two ladies that were part of that case were each awarded 1.5 million and 500,000 respectively. And so anytime you hear that someone has been detained in a hospital, that can attract a penalty on the side of the hospital. And you need to appreciate as a law student that detention is unlawful and it's unconstitutional as far as our Kenyan laws are concerned. When it comes to payment of a medical bill, we need to understand as students that a patient and a hospital enter into a contractual relationship, meaning that the hospital is going to treat you in exchange for the money that you're going to pay that particular institution. And so, should circumstances arise where you are unable to pay money as a patient, and then in this case, the hospital is at liberty to pursue you as the patient for the debt within the confines of the law governing the recovery of debts. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the only alternative the hospital has is to pursue you within the confines of the law governing recovery of debts, meaning that you cannot be detained by a hospital, because as far as the law stands up to today, it is illegal to be detained for non-payment of medical bills. So in 2018, in a case that involved Gideon and Daniel versus Nairobi Women's, the judge stated that an illegal detention of a patient is not one of the avenues for recovery of debt within our Kenyan legal system, meaning that these institutions also break the law when they detain you in their facilities. The legal alternative they have is to actually pursue you within the confines of the law governing the recovery of debts within the Republic of Kenya. In fact, as far as this case was concerned, the hospital, which is Nairobi Women's, was ordered to release the patients from detention. The law is full of exceptions, and when it comes to the second objective of this video, indeed there are certain circumstances under which you're going to be detained within a health facility and it will be considered to be legal. Up to this point in time, I'm sure you must have heard about the Public Health Act. Now, this act comes into play when there is a need to protect the rights of the individuals who might have contracted an infectious and dangerous disease, and the right of the general public to be protected from that infection, meaning that the state tries to balance between your rights as an individual and the rights of the general public from contracting a certain infectious disease that you might have. This is what is happening during the current pandemic. And if you want to understand how the Public Health Act of Kenya works, please consider reading this case. It will break for you down certain provisions of this act in a way that you're able to understand and put context to the provisions of the entire act. Now, as far as COVID-19 and detentions is concerned, under Section 27 of the Public Health Act of Kenya, remember the government has the authority to isolate a person who has been exposed to an infection, meaning that when you see people being isolated and put in certain locations for a given number of days, what the government is trying to do is that they're protecting you as an individual first, from that infection until you get better, and they're also protecting the general public, because when you go out there you could expose the general public to an infection. And so what the government is doing here is that, number one, remember, they're protecting you to get better from that infection, and secondly, they're also protecting the general public, because one person can affect over hundreds of people. So this is what the government is trying to achieve. And so that detention does not mean that you're under imprisonment, but it's done in accordance to Section 27 of the Public Health Act to ensure that you're well and the general public is also well. Now, also remember that for those who may break the law, as far as Section 28 of the Public Health Act is concerned, remember, if out of your own will and you know that maybe you have been exposed to COVID-19, you go ahead to interact with more and more people. In this case, actually what you're doing could cause you a penalty for exposing so many people to this infection, and it's an offense within the Public Health Act of Kenya. So again, like I said, if you want to understand how this Public Health Act of Kenya works, consider reading the case I provided in the previous slide. Now, this brings us to the end of this video, and in the next video we're going to be talking about the right to confidentiality as far as the hospital environment is concerned. And if you're new here, please remember to subscribe. Thank you.